Just let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, my name is Burtin, Purvis. I'm a pastor, local pastor, been in pastor 52 years, so we've done this a long time. It's really nice and good to be with you. By the way, I'm a New Orleans graduate, for those of you who are here in 1975.
We need to record you.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Start again.
I've got to stay back here. I'm not one that likes to stand behind pulpits, so it's a problem. My name's Burtin Purvis. I am a pastor and was a 1975 graduate of the D-Min program here in New Orleans, and was very, very grateful to have that experience. It's good to be back on campus. As I said, we're experiencing some minor difficulty here. It's downloading, so it should be done shortly, and we'll just hang on until we get there. What we want to do today is look at a brief history of Islam in America, and then get a sense of what is actually happening in America with the nation or the Islam. So we'll kind of get a feel of what is their agenda and what their plan is and how it's being executed. What we got last night was an excellent historical backgrounds of Muhammad and his experience from the time he was born through his all of his times of receiving. I just went blank on the word, James. What's the resuscitations? I always went blank. I knew I'd do that. And then, of course, to his death. After Muhammad passed away, there was a lot of conflict about how to go forward with their religion. You know a little bit about what happened in the following years as they took over most of the known world and was stopped finally in Europe. But what we want to talk about today is what's happening as far as America is concerned and how the United States fits into their worldwide plan. And what I've done, I've got. Let me get right here. We can get started a little bit. If that thing shows up, we'll be in pretty good shape. Let me just share this with you. I want you to just guess who it was. We're still working on it. Who it was that said this. This is a document that was prepared years ago, but I want you to kind of take a look at this. In the 7th century of the Christian era, a wandering Arab of lineage of Hagar the Egyptian, combining the powers of transcendent genius with preterminal energy of a fanatic and the fraudulent spirit of an impostor, proclaimed himself as a messenger from heaven and spread dissolution and delusion over an extensive portion of the earth. Adopting from the sublime conception of Mosaic law the doctrine of one omnipotent God. Are we still good? Yeah. He connected indissolubly with it an audacious falsehood that he was himself his prophet and apostle. Adopting this new revelation of Jesus, the faith and hope of immortal life and a future retribution, he humbled it to the dust by adapting all of the rewards and sanctions of his religion to the gratification of sexual desires. Do you have any idea who said that? There's an American president, actually, who said that. And let me just share with you a little bit the next portion here so you get a better idea. Not a current one, obviously. He poisoned the sources of human felicity at the fountain by degrading the condition of the female sex and the allowance of polygamy, and he declared indistinguishing the exterminating war as a part of religion against the rest of mankind. The essence of his doctrine was violence and lust, to exalt the brutal over the spiritual part of human nature. This is a direct quote from John Quincy Adams.
Really?
And yeah, I can say I hate standing behind the pulpit. Sorry. This is, of course, our third president after Jefferson, and you say, well, how did he come to have such knowledge of this religion? The answer to that was that he was a part. John Adams' dad was a part. It was in England as an ambassador from the U.S. in the late 1780s, along with Thomas Jefferson in France, and they had. There was a problem that arose, and that was the Barbary pirates, and they were attacking our ships and with no cause. And were capturing our people, destroying our ships, and taking slaves as a result. And so, in discussing that, they had approached the ambassador to England. If I can find this picture here, I've got it on my presentation. This fellow right here, and they asked him, "Why are you doing this?" And his statement was very insightful. This is what was written to the United States Congress as a report from Jefferson and Adams. He said, the answer was founded on the laws of their prophet, that it is written in their Quran that all nations who should not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, and that it was their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found, and to make slaves of all who could not take as prisoners, and that every Muslim who should be slain in battle was sure to go to paradise. And we got it. You want to set up? It actually showed up. So what we have here, what we have, I'm used to teaching a class in college, and we didn't have this restriction. What we have here is a expression. Very early founding fathers, how did they come to this knowledge? How did they get this information? And it goes back as America was developed in that preceding years before the Revolution, that there was an intense desire in American life, especially among the intellectuals, to understand government and how it was founded and what was the best process by which it could be instituted. And so they did a great deal of research. There was volumes of discussion, especially in American pulpits, about how to form and create a lasting government that the world had never seen before. And so as they developed this, they decided that it had to be based on law. Of course, that sounds like a simple answer. But they also concluded that the problem was that law had to be based either in man or in God. And then the question obviously was, well, if it's man, which man? And you can imagine whether it's Hitler or Mussolini or Mao or you name any number or any number of American presidents, which man should have that ability to describe and ascribe law in its total purpose to a government? And so you know that if the man changes, that perspective changes. And so they eliminated the idea that man should be the foundation, but they went to the concept of God. And then they asked, which God? Is it going to be the God of the Jews and Christians, or is it going to be Zoroaster or Buddha or some other? And as they went through the process, they determined that law should be based on the law of the God of the Bible. And so there were two sources that our founding fathers used predominantly. The two most dominating sources for the writing of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution was the Holy Bible and Blackstone's commentaries on English law. Mm-hmm. And those two commentaries, those two sources, created a fundamental understanding that all law should be based on the laws of nature and nature's God. And that was the fundamental founding principle that Americans had when we started our country. And for the first 150 years, Blackstone's commentaries was the cornerstone piece of American law. We started drifting away from that, and you can see where we are today, where we have many laws that are not according to laws of nature or God's God of nature. So we can see how that's clearly creating a difficulty as we go forward. So what we've done in processing, we can close. It's not happening. Okay. So what happens is that these guys, when they got this information, they shared with them a very clear understanding of what was happening and how the Muslims should be handled. Now, what's in America, what we see is that Islam did not remain in this country as any kind of a viable force into the 1930s. In 1930s, there arose a movement among blacks in America that eventually came out to a group led by Elijah Muhammad and was known as the Black Muslims. And those Black Muslims were a fracture of diverse group off of Islam. It was definitely not pure Islam. But as that started to develop, especially in the 60s, his son came along and decided that it was a good idea to move it back toward regular Islam, and created a great division within Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm, not Malcolm X, but
Louis Farrakhan.
Farrakhan. Thank you, Louis Farrakhan, and divided that movement. And his name was Wallace Muhammad, and he created that process. And you look it up, you'll discover a whole lot more information. What then happened is that let's shift to the Muslim world. After World War I, the Ottoman Turk Empire, which was the latest caliphate. Now, do you understand what a caliphate is? Caliphate is what Muhammad had said was that they wanted to establish a worldwide caliphate with Sharia law as its foundation. And Sharia law is a legal system that we'll discuss in a few moments. And that caliphate existed from till just right after World War I, and when the head of the nation of Turkey ended the caliphate, which was a huge problem in the Muslim world, because the caliphate symbolized the establishment of what Muhammad had set out to do, and that was a worldwide dominated government based on Sharia law. And so when that disappeared, there was a huge movement among Muslims to reestablish it. That was reestablished by a group in Egypt in the 1930s, and they became known as the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, these folks, you need to put that term in your mind and look them up and get more detailed information, because the Muslim Brotherhood is a pretty significant group of folks, and they have influence all over the world. In 1930, they started the movement that would eventually end up in America. They have a very detailed plan by which to take America and to move into the American way of life and to overcome America. That's been their plan from there. They play the long ball. They go for a long time, and they don't mind what it takes. And they're very detailed, and they're very structure oriented. So they began by establishing what's known as the Muslim Student Association, and that's they're on hundreds and hundreds of campuses across the United States. This is their major recruiting tool for Islamic Jihad and for the movement in the Islamic world. I've got some, since I'm, look at you. Time out. Let me get down here to where I need to be. Okay, I'm going to have to plug it, change that. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, well. Oh my goodness. Holy moly.
Look at there. Let there be light.
See, there is a God. Thank goodness. There we go.
In his name is an honor.
There we go. Now, this changed. Let me step back just a little bit and get on track here. What we did was we established our government on what we know as the Apostles' Creed. That's kind of what we all agree on, a number of things. I know we could argue that, but what we have to get a hold of is Islam does not follow that. They follow the basic law of Islam as Sharia, and the crest for Sharia is to dominate the whole world, and this is what you get. All over the world, you'll see these kind of things happening. Perhaps you've seen them on the news. Have you seen these? Have you seen these things?
Yep.
Okay, and this one is in Kansas, and it gives us an encouragement. Their whole idea is built on Islam as a Sharia law. Now, let me explain what that means. Sharia law means that is a direct legal system and direct competition with our Constitution. There is no possible way that Sharia law and our Constitution can coexist. Okay, that's where we run into problems. The other thing that you need to know is that as we go through this, people say, well, let's reform Islam. There is no reformation of Islam. You need to understand that that is not possible. And you say, well, why isn't it? And it's not a possibility because of the way it's set up. According to Islam, as a legal system, it's already in concrete. Since the 9th century, it has been in concrete. And there is not, since Muhammad was the last prophet, and what he said and did, the Quran and the Sunnah, since those two things are in place, and there is legal interpretation of all of those things, those legal interpretations are they're not really interpretations, they're explanations, and just give you information about what the legal scholar says that it believes and what they believe it says, and it's set, and it is accepted worldwide. Now what this is the reliance of the traveler. This is a document that is considered, you'll see one of these in every mosque, and most homes that people who believe in Islam will have one of these. This is authoritative Islamic law. If it's in this book, you have to do it. And it's required. It's what they call obligatory. And so you have some very interesting things. So why don't you come up and let me show you this just to help you understand. Somebody come up here right quick, because I'm not supposed to get out from behind this right quick. Somebody step up. Come on. I won't bite. I want you to say show you where this is being published. Where is it being published?
Beltsville, Maryland.
In Maryland. Now let me show you this page right. Yeah. I want you to see what that has the most authoritative Islamic. Did you read this right here?
We certify that the above-mentioned translation corresponds to the Arabic original and conforms to the practice and faith of the Orthodox Sunni community. Ala Sunnah wal Jamaa.
Yeah, that's good.
There is no objection to printing it and circulating it.
Okay. This comes from the oldest Islamic school of jurisprudence in the world, and it's in Egypt. And Al-Azhar is the name of it, and this book has been certified, and so it is acceptable, and there's no discussion about whether or not it is good and acceptable Islamic law. So if it's here, it's accepted as law, and it has to be obeyed. See, and here's the thing. If you're a good Muslim, then the idea is that you're going to be faithful to Allah. And if Allah says that the Quran is was not written by Muhammad, or the Quran was recitations from Allah to him, and he just wrote it down. Now you got to remember, as James said just now, it's pretty interesting because they wrote it on anything they could, on leaves, on scraps of paper, on bone, on pieces of parchment. It was all kinds of things, and these scribes wrote them down, and then later, as much as 15 to 18 years after his death, they were put together. And so you have a lot of oral tradition that went on before that, but is that they've come down with the Quran, this becomes authoritative interpretation or explanation of the Quran. Okay, makes sense? Am I overwhelming you with too much information? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Was that Sunni or
Shia.
Shia?
Yeah, it's
or
Sunni.
Does it make a difference
It's Sunni.
for them?
Actually, you have to understand Sunni and Shia. There's two groups, two major groups of Islam. Most of you probably know that, Sunni and Shia. The division came as a result of whether or not the successor to Muhammad would be elected or would be a blood relative. Okay. And so they have these little discussions and these little fights, but when it comes to Islamic law, they don't disagree. Now, they may, when they get down to, do you kill all Jews and Christians or all non-believers? They don't disagree with that. They may disagree with how you do that, but they don't disagree with the concept. And so you have, once this law is established, there's really no discussion about the validity of it. Okay, other questions? Same one, okay. That's helpful. Now let me see. We were just talking about the Quran. Let me just give it to you right here. It's Quran, which we have divided into parts of time in order that thou mayest recite to men's intervals we have revealed in stages. Let me explain to you this whole concept of the Quran. There's one very, very important concept that you need to get a hold of. It's the concept of abrogation. And it's a very a very interesting concept because of the way that it's handled with. I'm sorry. There we go. If you'll notice that, as James mentioned yesterday, there are 3 periods of the Meccan periods that where these things were recorded, where his shuras were recorded. The early Meccan, middle Meccan, and later Meccan periods, and they are not considered authoritative because of abrogation. What abrogation means is that whatever comes later takes precedent over the former. And so anything that was written in Medina is going to have precedence over everything that was written in Mecca. So in Mecca, you have, let's kind of rehearse what James shared last night, which was so good. What happened there is that he started getting this information and writing it down. His wife converted, a couple of family members, a couple of other people converted. But after the first 3 or 4 years, he had like 40 people, and there was resistance, a lot of resistance to it. And over the period of years, he gave up on it and moved over to Medina. Now, in that process, what happens is that the way he writes his each one of these shuras changes. In the early Meccan period, it's very consolatory because he's working with Jews and with Christians and other religions in Mecca. And he accepts them. He's very gracious, and it's a religion of peace. And you'll hear, we're a religion of peace, and don't you believe it? It's just not true because of abrogation. And so you have to remember what their definition of peace is. Their definition of peace is the existence of humanity under Sharia law. And so it's only interpreted under Sharia law. So where we would say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that's kind of the kind of peace that we like, they'd go, oh no, peace is when you have to submit to Sharia law. And you are totally abiding in that context. And if you do that, then you will experience the peace of Islam. So we have in the Medinas where you have you'll see those last shuras. You'll notice down at the bottom, 9 and 5 are the last 2 that he wrote, and so those are the ones that have abrogation over the rest. Look what whoever seeks a religion other than Islam will never have it accepted of him, and he will be of those who have truly failed in the hereafter. And basically saying if you don't accept Islam, you're going to hell. And they have a concept of hell. So that gives you kind of an understanding. Now let me take a look at this. Let me see if I can get this to work. Here we go. Fight and slay the unbelievers wherever they can be found, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war. Any questions about that? That's the next to the last surah that was written. Is there any question about what he wants to do with you? If you don't convert to Islam, what's their plan? You see that there's only 2 or 3 options that you have. You either convert to Islam, or you stay as a Christian and you have to pay the jizra, which is the poll tax, or you die. I mean, that's just very simple. Now, what happened? Some of you, we have been sharp to pick up what's going on with ISIS. There was a number of towns when they took over that they came in and collected the jizra from the Christians that were in the town. They marked their homes with crosses and came back that night and murdered all the family and took the wives and children into slavery. And that's their process. Okay, number 3, and fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which have been forbidden by Allah and His apostle, even if they are of the people of the book. And that's an expression for Jews and Christians, until they pay the jizya with a willing submission and then free themselves subdued. Actually, he goes on. He gets pretty aggressive with this in 9. And he basically says that they're going to pursue you until the rocks will cry out, there's a Jew behind here, come kill him. And he called the Muslim warrior to kill wherever possible. Let me skip that. Just tafsir is the interpretation. Can you read that? You see, well, what exactly does it mean? And I'm not sure you can read that. When he said, what does it mean on earth in general, except for the sacred area for Allah? And then it says, and executing some and keeping some as prisoners. Was it capture them? It says, what does that mean? And the interpretation is and besiege them and lie in wait for them and and after every ambush, and do not wait until you find them. Rather, seek and besiege them in their areas and forts, and gather intelligence about them in various roads and fairways. You getting the idea?
Yep.
Okay, it's an extremely aggressive position that they take. Now, they have stages in which they want to do this, so you understand. Now, Sharia law is the one thing. The other thing that we need to look at is al-lisan al-kamil. This is an expression that means that he is the most exalted of all men, or the greatest example of a man. And he's talking about Muhammad. The two most influential things in Islam are first the Quran, and the second one is what we call the al-kamil, and that is the influence that Muhammad had, the Shuma. And that is, what did he say and what did he do? And so if you're a Muslim and Muhammad entered the mosque with his right foot first, you are obliged as a Muslim to enter the mosque with your right foot first. So if you're a Muslim, and since Muhammad was willing to, this is what we were just saying, and you want to marry a 6-year-old, that's perfectly acceptable because Muhammad did it, and he is the perfect example of a man. And if you want to consummate that marriage at 9 years old, you can do that. And this guy right here, al-Bukhari, is 9th century, and he is the best interpretation of these hadiths, what they're called hadiths, and they put them into example of those of what exactly he did and how he did it. And let me show you this right here. Take a look at there at the top. All Muslim scholars are agreed that Bukhari is the most authentic and reliable book after the Book of Allah. Bukhari was compiled by that fellow right there. There is 7,563 hadiths in this great collection, and it is considered authoritative. In other words, whatever Bukhari says in interpretation of the law, it works. That's what it is. And he still stands as that authority. Now, this is Bukhari. The prophet said, the hour of judgment will not come until Muslims fight the Jews and kill them, and I will not until the Jews hide behind rocks and trees, and I will not come until the rocks and trees say, O Muslim, O servant of God, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. That's Bukhari. Allah's apostle said, by him in whose hand my soul is, son of Mary, Jesus, will shortly descend among you people, Muslims, as a just ruler will break the cross and kill the pig and abolish the jizya. That sounds like an exciting moment, doesn't it? What this reference here is saying that, and by the way, their interpretation of who Jesus is and who Moses is you would not agree with what they would say. They believe that the Old Testament was corrupted by the Jews, and the New Testament was corrupted by priests, and with the removal of all references to Islam, and that Jesus, one of their sayings in the Quran is God is not a father and he doesn't have a son. And so they're totally moved away from that. And you can understand that when you realize that Muhammad lost his dad when he was 6. You can understand some of the ideas that he comes up with. And right here, you'd say, well, the Jews and Christians both serve, and Muslims serve the same God. And what he's saying here is that Jesus will descend, this Messiah will come and amongst his people as a just ruler, and will break the cross, which is destroy Christianity, and will kill the pigs, which is which is Judaism, and abolish the jizya, which means it won't be necessary anymore because they'll be dead or changed. Okay, questions? I know I'm racing through this because I've got a lot to do. Anything? Questions, Bill? Yes.
Why does it say, you said something about the pig represented the Jewish?
Jewish, right.
And why is that?
Because they
has nothing to do with pigs.
Yeah, it does, because they know that it's the Jews will not have anything to do with pigs. And it's a derogatory statement and an insult against them, exactly.
Abomination of.
Yeah, so the question is, what is a Muslim? And the answer to that, the Muslim is one who submits to the Sharia law. And so we talked about that, and then we can get to the reliance of the traveler. Wow. let me read this. By the way, this book is the most commonly used textbook in Islamic schools in America. It is used from the first grade up through 12th grade. It has been used for a number of years. This is the latest addition to it. And let me just read to you. There was one, I wanted to tell you what a Muslim is. Anyone who follows his heart and intellect and seeks to submit to Allah as his creator is called a Muslim. Therefore, a Muslim is a person who's seeking peace by submitting to Allah. So how do you submit to Allah? I told you already. Do you remember?
Follow the Sharia.
Follow the Sharia law. That's how you submit to Islam and submit to Allah. So that's the nature of it. This is a very interesting read, guys, and it's very detailed, very, very well done. But you will not believe some of the things that they teach in this, and they go through. Alliance of the Traveler, we mentioned to you already.
Would Lifeway have that?
No. No. This is abrogation, as I mentioned to you. Let me show you what it says. And this is surely those who believe, those of jury of Christians and Sabaeans, whoever has faith in Allah in the last day and works righteous, their wage awaits them with the Lord. Now let's show you what abrogation does to that. Somebody read that for me. I can't see it. Somebody else.
The faith of the Jews was that of whoever adhered to the Torah, for the Sunnah of Moses, upon whom be peace until the coming of Jesus. When Jesus came, whoever held fast to the Torah and the Sunnah of Moses without giving them up and following Jesus' laws.
Okay. Do you see the change? See the abrogation?
Yep.
Look here. Somebody read that one for me. Read it real loud.
The faith of the Christians was that whoever adhered to the Evangelical and precepts of Jesus, their faith was valid and acceptable until the coming of Muhammad. Allah bless him and give him peace. Those of them who do not then follow Muhammad, Allah bless him and give him peace, and give up the Sunnah of Jesus and the Evangel were lost.
Okay, so here's your abrogation again. You see, this is where they say, when Jesus came, we recognize your faith in, but what happened was an incomplete revelation, and with the new revelation, abrogation takes over, and they needed to reject Jesus and accept Muhammad. Now, the problem with abrogation, as you can see, is that they say that this is closed, that the Quran and the Sunnah is not possible to add anything to it. But what happens with abrogation? You know, you go, oh, we got a new revelation, and it changes. But they're pretty staunch with that not happening. So you can see why it would be difficult. Okay, let's go. Oh, I'm adding things here. Let me see. Here we go. This is, again, there's the concept of these two. I'm going to go through this really fast because it's hard to do this. But in Moses, you can see that God has chosen from all the nations on the earth, face of the earth, and to be people of particularly own. What you see on the other side over there is related to Muhammad. Let me see if I can read it. And Allah's hand is tied up, but their hand's tied up and they're cursed. So you get a different concept. Looking down again below there to Moses, you shall be my special possession. And the Islam expression will not accept it. So what he says, God's promise to Abraham as Jews, as we understand it in Christians, is an everlasting pact. But that you know that they would challenge that. Jesus approached and said, to all power in heaven and earth was given unto me. And Islam would say, and they do blaspheme and say Allah is Christ, the Son of Mary. So you get. I'm going to hit this really fast here, and show you that these. If you just read those things, you can see them, and you can see where the conflict is between the God of Israel and the God of Christianity and the God of Islam, and obviously they don't line up, and they're not the same God. All right, Sharia. This is a fun thing. What is that? I want somebody else would like to come read for me. I want you to come read this. Anybody want to volunteer? we're in O, aren't we? Looking for, I'm sorry, I apologize for being slow with this. Yeah, it is English. If I can find what I'm looking for. It's actually who is responsible for jihad. It says, and this is injures crams. I'm sorry. Sorry. There we go. Okay, read that. That's what this is right there.
Jihad is a communal obligation.
Okay, so what does communal obligation mean? It means it's a part of the community and it's required. That if you're a practicing Muslim, you're required to do jihad. What's your definition of jihad? Jihad, according to this book, is war against any non-Muslim. Does that put you in that category? Does that help you understand? Read this one right here for me.
Jihad is personally obligatory upon all those present in the battle lines.
Read this one.
Jihad is also personally obligatory for everyone.
So you say, well, what is jihad? Read this one here for me. A little
The
bit longer.
Caliph makes war upon Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians, provided he has first invited them to enter Islam in faith and practice, and if they will not, then invited them to enter the social order of Islam by paying the non-Muslim poll tax.
Okay, hang on right there. Hang on. So what's he saying? He's saying, look, they are obligated to give you an opportunity to join them or to pay the jizya. And if you don't join them and don't pay the jizya, then they give you, it's legal for them to kill you. It's legal for them to cut your head off. I mean, you say, well, why is it legal for them to cut my head off? Why did they cut my head off? And the answer to that is because their whole philosophy of war is maximum terror. That's why you remember the guy in Oklahoma City that was workplace violence? You remember that guy? The guy came into his workplace and he took a knife and attacked a woman and cut her head off in the workplace in Oklahoma City. And the government declared that it was workplace violence. The problem was, all the time he was doing it, he was hollering Allah Akbar and had tried to recruit people because that's required. You got to give them a chance to join you. So he tried to get them to join him and they didn't. And so he came back the next day, started cutting people's heads off. And we called it workplace violence. But because of an ignorance of what jihad is and understanding of what's going on, that's what happened. So it's kind of crazy. Go ahead.
Which is the significance of their paying it, not the money itself, while remaining in their ancestral religions. And the war continues until they become Muslim or else pay the non-Muslim poll tax.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you. So you get an idea? Where's the definition of apostasy? And so you go to same section, 08. Somebody else want to read? You want to join this little adventure? Anybody? Since I don't have my glasses, would somebody please bail me out? Thank you. This is apostasy. Start right there.
Leaving Islam is the ugliest form of unbelief, kufr, and the worst. It may come about through sarcasm, as when someone says, "Trim your nails, it is sunnah." And he replies, "I would not do it even if it were," as opposed to when some circumstance exists which exonerates him of having committed apostasy, such as when his tongue runs away with him, or when he is quoting someone or says it out of fear.
Okay, read the next one. Just the yellow.
When a person who has reached puberty and is sane voluntarily apostatizes from Islam, he deserves to be killed.
Can't leave.
Yeah. So, what can you say? And you remember, this is acceptable Islamic jurisprudence. It's law, and so you've heard of honor killings. Why, do you understand what honor killing is? It's when, especially a female, does something that's inappropriate. It may be that she just was alone with a man that's not her husband, but she may be holding hands in public. It can be anything that they determine is inappropriate for that situation. So you.
And a lot of our courts are wanting to start accepting Sharia law.
Yeah. And this is the thing. You understand that there is no compromise. Thank you. There is no compromise between constitutional law and Sharia law. You cannot mix the two. This is the thing you have to understand is wherever the whole idea, and by the way, you see this one online, we need to look at that too, but wherever you have Sharia law, it supersedes constitutional law. And so when you see in different places where people are saying, well, there's actually locations in America where the law of the land is not being enforced because of Sharia law, because they're afraid to do that, this is just absolutely seditious for America. It is rebellion at its core, and it is illegal, and we're giving ourselves over to allowing these folks to have a voice in our government that is illegal and irresponsible. And it will cause us to end up with a confrontation at some point. I don't have a lot of time to. I wanted to show you this though. This is the explicit statement that lying is sometimes permissible and even required. It's obligatory. And you understand that Islam has the right and is encouraged to lie to anyone for the purpose of Islam. If it furthers the case of Islam, it helps them. Then they can lie to you, and there's no conscience to it. It's an amazing concept that it's really foreign to us. Okay, we're gonna move on past that. I got something I want to show you guys. Let me show you if I can get this to come up here. Ooh, okay, I can't. Okay, what did I do? I did something not good. You want to come up here and see if you can help me get this back where I got it? I'm not sure what. Let me find out where I am again. Make sure. Y'all have any questions at this point? Am I overwhelming you?
I have a question.
Yes.
Where is Sharia law being practiced in the U.S.?
There are places in Michigan, Detroit, in the Twin Cities where there are places there where it's actually being occurred. It's much more prevalent in Europe. There are no-go zones in Paris, and there are more Muslims in England. There are Methodists and Baptists. So you're talking about we're talking about a concept here that I need to explain. Jihad can occur in a number of different ways. What we're experiencing in America is what's known as jihad, cultural jihad, which is civilizational jihad. And what they're doing is they're moving in and taking over different things. What I wanted to show you is a video that is by John Guandola from Understanding the Threat. And by the way, if you can look on his website, there's all kinds of great stuff there. UnderstandingTheThreat.org. John Guandola is his name. He's an former FBI agent. Excellent resource. In this presentation, he shows you in America what's happened. In 1963, we had the coming of the Muslim Student Association. Since 1963, the establishment of the Muslim Brotherhood has been very, very strong. And how many are familiar with the Holy Land Foundation? Are you all familiar with that? Do you know what?
Terrorist group.
What am I messing up here? Yes, it is a terrorist group. The Holy Land Foundation was a trial that happened in 2006, and it was the largest, most successful legal prosecution of fundraising for a terrorist group in the history of the United States. In that group, the Holy Land Foundation was convicted, and they were put into prison. There was a number of co-conspirators that were with them, including CARE, which is
Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, which is Muslim Brotherhood. Most of the over 3,000 mosques in America are owned by NATE, North American Islamic Trust. Most of those mosques are owned by Nate, and Nate is controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. CARE is the front for Muslim Brotherhood. And so anytime you see CARE, you'll see it when they had the San Bernardino folks that did that couple that killed those people. CARE out of Los Angeles came on and said, "Oh, we hate terrorism. We're against terrorism." What's your definition of terrorism? Any action taken against a Muslim and keep them from instituting Sharia law. And so they say the word, but it doesn't mean the same thing to you as it does to them. And so you see this kind of situation that's going on where they sound like they mean business, but they don't. What are they doing? Obligatory lying. And that's you'll see this over and over again, where they will say things, and because they have different definitions and because they dance, they don't mind at all doing that. And here's the problem, is that CARE, under George W. Bush, under Clinton first, then under George W. Bush, and then under Obama, CARE became a major influence. They weren't just influential, they were setting U.S. policy. And even today, there's some influence in our government at the highest levels. John Guandola was a part of the FBI when the FBI training manuals were scrubbed of all reference to Sharia and all reference to the process and the objectives that Islam has in America, and they made it politically correct. And as a result, we hear things and see things that just blow our mind. Do you remember? One of the statements of the Muslim Brotherhood is that their desire is to bring cultural jihad to America by our own hand. In other words, we're going to cause it. And that's where you see the left and the communist influence of the left and Sharia, Islam, joining hands together, because both of them, and if you'll watch on television, you'll see Black Lives Matter, and you'll see the Islam right there together fighting the same battle. And what are they doing? They have joined forces in order to destroy America, to bring it down, to create an atmosphere of rebellion and uncertainty and distrust. And that's where you see the cultural wars, where you see this agitation of racism. All of that is a result for one purpose, and that is to bring down America. Now, these two groups have got the same purpose, and that purpose is to destroy America. And so they've joined forces, and you'll watch them do that. Now, what would happen if if they succeed? They'll fight each other, and it'll be a braggadocious fight. Yes, ma'am.
So you said Black Lives Matter, and what was the other one?
Black Lives Matter, and any of the Muslim Brotherhood organizations. There's a bunch of them. You'll see them.
Yeah.
You'll see them. They'll have signs that will identify them as Sharia compliant. If you want to find out what a heart of a Muslim really is, ask him if he's Sharia compliant. Mm-hmm. Just kind of give them, and if they tell you they are, you'll get a whole new perspective. Yes, ma'am.
So I want to flip this on its head.
Okay.
Because we're at the ministries to new
Good,
religions.
good.
And so what does it look like to love a Muslim well, to be Christ to them? Because I'm not hearing that, and I hear what you're saying. I agree that this is a thing that's going on. I understand my
it's good. Great question.
But, God's speaking to Muslims through dreams.
Yeah.
He is working, and I think as much as I love my country and care about it, I sense all this fear. And I know I'm to be wise, wise as a serpent, but I'm also to be Christ to these people. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
And I know Muslim people who do not, so that's their book, but they don't know it, they don't live it, they just are people on the, they worship.
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me answer your question. It's we need to understand there is a redemptive nature, and this is kind of John and our organization, Understanding the Truth, is fairly militant, as you can tell, against what's going on, because we have a very dear and sincere belief that America is the best place in the world to live, and what we have is something worth valuing and holding on to. At the same time, because of my background, there is a redemptive nature to all this, and so the question is, how do I do that? And it's a very, very good question. The first thing that you do is you need to establish where are these people that you're close to, where are they from? What is that perspective they have? That's why I said, ask them if they're Sharia compliant. If they're Sharia compliant, you know that there's a shift in how you will deal with them. Many Muslims are not going to be aggressive as what we've talked about here. They have an understanding and a working knowledge of this. And here's where the problem where it arises for most Muslims is that in the event that an imam comes to them, or the head of their ummah, their community comes to them and calls upon them to be Sharia compliant, they have a serious problem. Because if they fail to be Sharia compliant, then they put themselves in jeopardy of death. And that's where most of them will struggle with that. But if you study this, you'll discover that there are many cases of where people have had ongoing relationships with Muslims and that have turned out badly. So what is your job? And your job, if you know, as a Christian believer, our responsibility is to love people. And so we must take a position and a direction toward loving them and be as wise as serpents and gentle as doves. So we've got to recognize that what they say to us may not be true, and then when they may have things that happen, but that doesn't change how we approach them. One of the most important phases of dealing with a Muslim is to help them understand and recognize a father's love. Because almost universally, there is no sense of fatherly love or family love. If you have to choose between family and Sharia, they'll choose Sharia. And so for you to demonstrate that kind of love to them is a total and complete shift in their mental understanding of what life is about. Now, the other possibility, and one of the things that's happening around the world, I'm familiar with one evangelical ministry where in a particular Muslim nation we can't share because of the safety of the individual, 400 imams have come and asked for Bibles, and they have taken those and distributed those, and those imams have accepted this new revelation of the finding in the Word of God. We want to be very careful to validate and to make sure that we can authenticate some of these claims. And I think the whole thing boils down to a personal relationship with you and a demonstration of Christ's love and a reliance on the supernatural revelation of the Holy Spirit through the Word of God and through your personal witness. Yes, sir.
I was just going to add a little bit to that. I've had a lot of experience with them. And if you can connect them to kind of an assurance of salvation, because supporting Sharia can also mean they just pay not really a tax, but it would be like how we tithe in church is their support of jihad, and that could be Sharia compliant. But they have no assurance of salvation except if they die during jihad.
Yeah.
And so I found them to be really respectful and listen to me. And this is in the context of witnessing to them in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Really respectful.
Yeah, let me speak to that. You can hear this. Comment was made that you can speak to them and they're very very respectful. The important things that he said here is that the only guarantee of salvation is to die as a martyr in jihad. So as a Muslim, if you die and you approach Allah, he, out of his total and complete discretion, gets to choose whether or not you go to heaven or hell. There is definitely a religion of works, and so the concept of grace and relationships with God is a strange new belief to them, and that's why it's so important to have a living example of that with them. Anything else you'd like to share about that? That's very good.
No, I mean, I would say, here we put it as radical Islam and then just Islam. This Islam in itself is radical, but most of them do not practice it in that sense. They'll agree with Sharia, but they do that to themselves as well. I mean, I've seen atrocities that they've done to each other just because they didn't like each other.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they view America, they don't separate religion and politics. So they don't like America because we're the #1 exporter of pornography, the sex, sex slavery, the alcohol. That's how they view us because we're a Christian nation. They don't separate the two. So that's how they view us, and they view us as polytheistic because of the Trinity.
Right. Yeah, those are all very good points, and there's things that we have to overcome. And the emphasis is on a personal relationship. This is where they don't understand that. That's not something that they can, have a working knowledge of. And this is one of the things that I get really excited about is what she said, is that God is revealing himself to Muslims in dreams all over the world. One report even says that there are literally hundreds of thousands of Muslims in northern Africa that are coming to Christ, and over a third of them have come as a result of dreams and visions. Now, if you want to do what God's doing, he's doing something there, and that's kind of exciting. And to see there is a pastor up in Vancouver that is a former Muslim, that is Malik. Do you know who Malik is? Malik, again, the bird left the limb, guys. Malik, what's his name? Anyway, he's a very fine Christian pastor that is a former Muslim, and you might want to take a look at that. Yes, ma'am.
Before we get too far from this, I believe you said a statement about the Black Lives Matter movement being joined to an Islamic group. I think we have to distinguish a political moral movement from a religion.
Yeah, actually, yeah, go ahead.
I think that what is going on in a lot of places is that movement is being ostracized by the evangelical Christian sect, and that the Muslims have seen an opportunity to come in and to support that movement where Christians have turned a blind eye. I think that is way different than saying they have combined and become some type of joined group, because most people in the Black Lives Matter movement are Christians, and part of their issue is that as Christians, we are not all being treated like Christians.
Yeah.
And so that, I think we have to be aware of the fact that the Muslims see that.
Right. Absolutely. They see the division and trying to do that, to capitalize on it. However, on John Gwendola's video that he has, that I've got loaded in my other computer, I'll be happy to show it to you. But he has a video of Black Lives Matter and the Muslims in New York City, and the Black Lives Matter stand up and says, "These are our friends, these are our brothers, they're joined with us, and we are one." And they both confess publicly on the video, saying, "We are one. If you were Black Lives Matter, we are Islam," and they're together. So it is definitely, if you study this, you'll see that there is a coalition and an agreement between the two groups to present a united front for change in America. And I think you're exactly right. I think Islam has attached itself to a movement that is expressing itself out of a genuine need and expression. And it just, but they have made a unity. There is a unified front to it. Okay, question?
I know for a fact, I was listening the other day, they said that the newest push has been on Middle and South American peoples to bring them into Islam and then them come.
Yeah, it is a worldwide effort. The Muslim Brotherhood is in every nation around the world, and they have an organization and a structure and a plan to convert every nation. They have I don't have time to show it to you. There's a 5-step plan. Muslim Brotherhood has a 7-step plan, and the 5-step plan for America, they're in step 4. And let me just share you with what's on John's video, understanding them. And it says basically that what we've seen in America, just basically what you've seen in the last 10 years, is that they come in, they've established themselves and made themselves known, they've become influential in our communities, and they began individual attacks in public. And he said, and what you're seeing in Europe now is the next stage, which is small group attacks of 3 and 4 and 5 of the jihad expressions in public, where they're killing people in groups. And he says that the plan publicly states that we have, as a result of the Holy Land Foundation raids, that shows that the next group is to have 10, 12, 15 of these people make public expressions of jihad within our states, and you're going to see it in Europe first. So when you see it in Europe, you'll know that it's coming because they're ahead of us in the jihad process. So again, what she said is so important is not to look at this in fear. And this is the reason why I sound that way, and when I'm sounding the alert, I feel like a watchman on the wall going, look out, look out. This is because there's so many of us have no concept and no understanding of what's going on. And that our desire here today is to awaken us to a point to say, what do I need to be doing? And sharing our faith, having a specific strategy towards reaching Muslims in your community is something that you definitely need to consider and have a plan. And if you need more information on how to develop that plan, we at Understanding Threat would be love to help you do that. Yes, sir.
Hey, we have some Muslim neighbors that moved in 2 doors down.
Yeah.
So we invited them down for cheese and crackers and tea. It was acceptable back to them. Just to talk, that sort of thing. We didn't really witness for Christ. We just, talked for a while. We haven't really had any interaction since then. What would you suggest would be next?
Okay. What the question is, this he has a neighbor that's moved in a couple of doors down, and they've made a social outreach to them, and they responded to you. They came. I would just exactly that. You'd continue that relationship building and reach out to them and include them in opportunities. You'll find varying degrees of success. If you have a very Sharia compliant Muslim, he probably will not even come to your home. But so you probably have an idea that he's not strictly Sharia compliant. And so what you need to do is continue to probe that relationship to see what he'll allow you to be in relationship with him. And the further you expose him to groups of people who have loving, caring relationships and who have a community, the more attractive it's going to be to him. And then you just I want to say that I think the door into the Muslim community is female. The female is so disregarded in the Muslim community that you show kindness and you show attentiveness and you show sensitivity and caring to a Muslim woman, ladies, not men, ladies, not men, you will discover that they will be responsive to you, and that's very good. You'll touch their hearts. Yes, sir.
My question is just kind of going back to our earlier conversation. How far do we allow this to affect our politics?
Okay, how far do we allow it to affect this politics?
To be stopped.
Yes, can it be stopped? And guys, I don't have an answer for that. The best thing I can say to you is that there are forces at work in our current government. That is, they're not anti-Muslim, but they are aware. Some of the changes that you're seeing occur on the White House staff is a result of people who are becoming who were not in compliance with the idea of Islam being an adversary, and we're seeing those people shifted out and people coming in who have a better working understanding of that. You're seeing that in the higher levels of government. There's a number of our congressmen and senators who have a working knowledge of this, and there's a number of them who just flat will not even listen. And that's where our prayers need to be directed. And we just do believe that there's going to be a continual awakening and expression and exposure to this. To where, one of the things I've learned in ministry is that if you give the devil enough time and enough rope, he's going to overexpose himself. And that's exactly what's going to happen with this. And we already started to see it. They're going to overstep their bounds. They're going to do some things that are totally wrong. And we're going to have an opportunity to step in. Again, which is important is you've got two groups. You've got the government and those things are going on there. But where the war is going to be won is with you guys. That's where, and I consider it a war because they consider it a war. And it's a war of hearts and lives. And it's going to come when you have that sensitivity and direction and God leads you to a Muslim. And you start asking God, how do I do this? This is where, they have absolutely no concept of priesthood of the believer. None. All they have is a legal system that's obligatory that they have to follow. So when you have the supernatural work of the Holy Spirit working in you to advance the cause of Christ into the lives of people, I get cold chills. That's cool. You get a supernatural, spur there, that just an impressive move of God that they can't match. And that's what we want to see. That's what we want to see happen is God at work in your life making a difference in their lives. And that's kind of what we want to see happen all across America. Yes, ma'am.
I I find this education very helpful as a foundation to
Yes.
build on.
Yes.
You think you're not going to come across a Muslim, but we do in stores and restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
Neighborhood. We started frequenting a Indian food restaurant about
Right.
a year and a half ago. It was owned and run by Pakistani Muslims. They didn't want to admit they were
Oh, yeah.
Pakistani because they thought it would limit their
Yeah.
clients.
Absolutely.
So I just felt like we needed to go back to this restaurant. And so I got a prayer team going for God to open the door. I just keep thinking we can't underestimate what prayer can do in opening
That's right.
doors and opening hearts.
Yeah, Deborah, I think
So-
your personal and this the statement she's making. I got to do this. The statement she's making is that there is a significant effect that we as individuals have when we take the initiative to have an encountering desire in the Muslim community, and it's very, very true. And again, you have the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit. You have the power and the ability to walk into a place and change the atmosphere. And I encourage you to do that. We got to close. I'm so sorry. Enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Love it much. God bless and have a good day.